Hello everyone, welcome back to the Movie Studio, and today I am reviewing the newest Disney live-action remake, which is Snow White. It just came out last weekend. I went with my friends to go see it, and to be honest, I wasn't expecting it to be very good. I mean, the Disney live-action remakes, for the most part, have not been very good. I have enjoyed a few of them a bit more, and I did like the Mufasa movie from December a lot. And I think that helped because it was kind of its own story. And I thought that was a pretty decent movie overall. But yeah, this was not very good. And, I just think I have an issue with them remaking like these type of movies, first of all. And I think it's the circle around to my main issue. It's not just this particular movie. It's just the recurring theme of their trying to make diversity in Disney movies. So in doing so, they're recasting lead white roles and making a black lead play them. And it's just leading to too much controversy, too much backlash, and ends up the movie tanking. So that's a big issue, and it really doesn't seem like they care. They just want to keep using name recognition for these movies to attempt to make money or get like the word out and blah blah blah, but they're unable to make news stories. And I mean, there have been some they do like one a year where it's like a news story, but nothing like that significant enough to like try to make movies off of that and sequels off of that, like franchises. And Disney is just stuck, so they resort to nostalgia. But then the live action remakes suck, so they're not getting anywhere with what they're doing. So like Snow White, for instance, it's a Latina girl who plays her, Rachel Zegler, who I thought did a fine job in the movie overall. I mean, she was definitely convincing as Snow White, and I don't have an issue with that. And there's been some controversy with the actress and her political views, and really not necessary to like get into all that too much in the political controversies. I don't think it's like super necessary for this review because it's more about the movie. I didn't have an issue with the actress. I thought she did a good job and she has a nice voice. I thought the Queen, I don't remember the actress's name. I can pull up Gal Gadot. Yeah. She wasn't the best actress. I mean, she's like beautiful, but I don't know. I think she overacted a lot and went too extreme with being the queen, and she just wasn't as evil as I felt like her animated counterpart was to me. So I think that was kind of a disappointment. Though I think the dwarfs were probably my biggest issue with this, and just how awful they looked. I mean, they CGI'd them. They honestly could have just had real people do it. Like, I mean, if you're going to make a live action Snow White, at least get real dwarfs and don't CGI it. It looked terrible. I mean, the voice actors were fine. They did a good job. But nonetheless, though, I was surprised by how little the dwarfs really were in the movie. I mean, they were still in a decent amount, but I feel like this movie was stuck with the story a bit because they drastically veered away from the plot of the original by introducing a love interest for Snow White. There's no prince in this movie. There's this bandit named Jonathan. He's been stealing from the queen and he gets caught. But Snow White saves him from getting caught, but then he gets re-caught later on. I mean, and honestly, that's part of the plot is fine. The love story was fine. I mean, I love love stories, so I didn't have an issue with the love story. In fact, I would say it was probably the best part of the movie, and the fact that they did take a different route. It also makes the ending or later on in the movie when he kisses her slightly less creepy. And the reason I say that is because the prince barely knew her and he kissed her. It felt very convenient, but I mean, it made more sense here because there is a blossoming relationship between them. The songs, some songs were okay, some songs not so great. In a way, I think the song with Snow White and Jonathan in the woods kind of reminded me of Love is an Open Door from Frozen. I mean, obviously, the Love is an Open Door is way better, but it kind of gave off those vibes of like this antsy romance and just the build up there for that. But also, this movie was not really a kid's movie, and I don't know what their intention was. I mean, that ending scene where the queen gets taken away and through the mirror and becomes like a monster type thing. I was like, this is not Marvel. This is Snow White. And I do think parts of this movie, like I feel like the stuff with the dwarfs, obviously, and Snow White and all that, that felt real. That was a good part overall. Sure, they looked awful, but I thought those scenes there worked pretty well because it felt the most like the original. But a lot of those other elements and the bandits too. It almost seems like they like I don't know. The bandits were in it, but not a whole lot. Like, why introduce all those bandits for it to kind of go nowhere? Like the overall plot. I almost wonder. And I know I read something somewhere about a massive writing overhaul and change and everything. I almost wonder if this movie was meant to be more about the bandits than the dwarfs, but then they realized that because their source or their source content is from a movie with dwarfs and the name of the movie, then they have to go and get dwarfs and add them more into the story if they weren't already in there before. So I feel like part of that, it just feels like this movie was a bit overloaded where it was mostly about Snow White and the dwarfs, and I feel like that's kind of what captured you. So here they went a different route, and I'm not complaining because the love story was nice. Just the bandit storyline, I don't really know why I mean, I get it because he's a bandit. But the fact that they introduced so many bandits, and they had like a fight scene too, but I don't know. It just felt like they really didn't know what to do with that part of the movie. Again, the dwarf scenes felt very like nostalgic to the original, and I think you kind of needed that because it's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. But ultimately, though, the ending whole standoff with Snow White and the Queen too. I mean, I think they were trying to go a bit deeper here. Obviously, you can't keep the same plot as the original. The original had a pretty basic concept, so they kind of went deeper into this whole thing about kindness and fairness and all of it, and her kind of taking back what the Queen had, and how she treated her and all. I mean, I thought all that was fine. The ending where she gets taken in and becomes a monster maybe was not as fine. Not gonna lie though, I think this movie had some pacing issues. I just don't think it was really necessary, and it again, the love story to me was the best part. The dwarfs looked awful, but I'm glad they had them in there a decent amount at least. The bandit storyline was just kind of odd there. I didn't really like the Queen at all. I don't know. I thought the Queen was just so hysterically just awful, but you kind of like love to hate her in the original Snow White. But in this Snow White, just the actress just completely overacted, and it just didn't really work. And yeah, so I was not a fan of the Queen overall. Not a fan. But basically, it just wasn't really a necessary movie to make. It's another just one of those classic live action remakes. And I'm kind of taking all these political things aside because I can make a whole video and all that drama. And I do agree that might be part of the reason why this movie failed is all of that. But I do think another reason too is that nobody likes these live action remakes. Nobody does, except maybe little kids. But I personally don't see how a little kid could watch this movie and enjoy it just because it just not really a kid's movie. Like, I mean, again, the scenes with Snow White and the dwarfs really were the only thing that felt like it was a kid's movie. And the other stuff, like the love story, whatever, I don't know. I mean, to me, it almost felt like they were copying Tangled. Like, it really gave off those Tangled vibes. And then I looked it up, and I found out they were doing a live-action Tangled. And I'm like, dang it. Like, don't mess with Tangled. It's one of my favorite movies. It's our prom theme for this year. Don't mess with Tangled of all movies. Snow White, I really don't care that much about. It's a good movie. Yeah, pretty simple plot. I think that's what made it good, with the Queen and all. But no, this live action remake was terrible. A few of the songs. Basically, a few of the songs were fine. The love story was fine. Snow White overall, and I will get into it a little bit here. So again, they casted a Latina girl in this role, probably, I assume, knowing they would get backlash, but just wanting to like open up the world of Disney to have these interracial castings, which is fine on paper, but we live in a sexist and racist world, in this case racist. So, and they kept repeating the line, "Who's the fairest of them all?" And I'm like, why would you? It just, for this role, The Little Mermaid, it worked fine. I didn't like The Little Mermaid was a decent remake overall. I didn't have as many issues with it. But for this movie, why would you do? I just don't get why, if you're gonna do an interracial casting, why choose Snow White when it's Snow White? I don't get it. I don't get it at all. And they say this movie is woke, and maybe there's some truth in that. Again, definitely not a kids movie. I mean, I'm sure some kids will enjoy it just because it's nostalgic and they like the original Snow White. But to me, the two were so vastly different. And you can make the argument you don't want to copy it, plot, like every single plot piece. But I'm also like, you shouldn't be doing a whole other movie of it anyways. It already had its own adaptation all those years ago. 1937, I think, is when it came out. Or something along those lines. But I don't know. I don't even know anymore. I'm gonna go ahead and end this because there's not really much else to talk about. But let me know down below. Have you gone to see Snow White? Or are you going to? Or what are your thoughts on it overall? Again, I didn't really get into political stuff. It just wasn't really necessary because that's not the movie itself. I was mostly talking about the story. I mean, the ending scene, though, was a bit odd. Like, when they were all celebrating in white, I'm like, did he? Question mark? Did he party? Question mark? That's all I'll say about that. I mentioned it to my friends, and they thought it was funny. But, yeah, I'll be back soon with my review of the When Calls the Heart finale, so I'll see you guys then. Thanks, everyone, for watching, and bye, everyone.